All right, hello again. This is Sarah at OCLC in Dublin. Thanks so much for joining us for one of our final Project Passage partner meetings. As you saw from the Community Center, we're also offering the same session tomorrow just to accommodate everyone's schedules. And after our last snafu, we changed the date on the screen to just fall, just in case this week didn't work out. So we're glad you're here and glad you can hear us, and we look forward to chatting with you one last time. Our agenda today is to, once again, do an enhancement review. And Taylor will be talking about what we've accomplished, what we set out to accomplish, and what we'd still like your opinion on. So we'd love to get some feedback from you in that section. We'll then talk a bit about project outcomes, what you had to say about the project, what we found about the project, and where we go from here in the form of research activities and moving from prototype to production. Even though it's our last meeting together, I couldn't resist not having a next steps item on the agenda, so there are a few. So we'll wrap up with that at the end of the session. All right, with that, I'll pass things over to Taylor.
Hi, everyone. This is Taylor. Thought we'd start off with a quick review of what we set out to do and how we presented this information to you. You probably recognize these two graphics from prior partner meetings. In Phase 2 and Phase 3, we sort of ranked the top 5 enhancements that we planned on doing. In Phase 2, we had improved indexing, batch loading partner entities, requiring reference sources for statements, offering property-based constraints, and searching by identifiers. And we got a lot of those accomplished, but not necessarily in that order. And then in Phase 3, we had tools to provide missing data, including dates for disambiguation, input form for descriptive data, including WorldCat data in the Explorer view and taxonomy navigation. So how did this all pan out in the end? So thinking about how the project went, I like to characterize it as building some things, observing with you how those things worked, and then adjusting the approach. So it was an iterative process, and we learned things along the way and adjusted our plans and expectations as we move through things. So in Phase 1, we started off with the entity editor built on top of Wikibase, just using the Wikibase interface to start things. Adding into that, the reconciliation API began to allow you to look for string matches, look for entities in the consolidated index, and figure out how to relate items together. That gave us the opportunity to also begin to make those relationships, but to get a more full view of what the graph of things that we were putting together looked like. We added in the SPARQL endpoint, and that gave us capability to start looking more fully at the graph of things that we were creating together. As we moved into Phase 2, we added in the Explorer UI. This started to give us the ability to expose and consolidate a view that brought together the things that you could search for in the entity editor and the things you could search for in the SPARQL endpoint, as well as doing the reverse matching and reverse traversing of the graph to get different sorts of relationships that you wouldn't always see in those other two views. So the Explorer UI was a really important breakthrough for discovering what things started to look like and what the relationships began to look like. Also, we added in not only the ability to use OpenRefine, but the OpenRefine API. This was a new view of the reconciliation API through the lens of OpenRefine. Started giving us all handles for how we might define relationships and use external systems to access the graph we were creating in Passage. Also, one of the nice features that got added in was Wikimedia Commons links, so the ability to upload digital items into Wikimedia Commons and be able to provide links to that to our Passage items that we were creating. And as we moved into Phase 3, we added in, actually a lot of things started coming together. The retriever was a big accomplishment for pulling in data from other data sets and being able to bring that into Passage and allow you to kind of expand things that you knew were out there and add them into the graph in Passage. We also had the serialization API, which was the first view on how to get data out of Passage in different serializations, whether it was RDF or JSON, but the ability to use that started to give another machine view into the graph and getting data out. Also, the ability to begin navigating broader and narrower terms through the graph and make sure that you were picking the right level of description in the taxonomy was added in. So that was a step forward there. And property-based constraints. This started to put together an example of how we could provide quality control in a shared environment and lay down community agreed upon rules for how we wanted to encode the entities and relationships between entities. And then the improved search experience really encompassed a number of things that people had noticed from the beginning, and it allowed us to incorporate indexing updates to provide better indexing, data for disambiguation, and searching by identifier. So that was all part of that improved search experience. So you can see in Phase 3, a lot of things accelerated based on the foundations that we laid in Phase 1 and Phase 2. So one of the things that, if you were paying attention on the prior slide, one of the things we didn't quite get to was incorporating WorldCat into the Explorer view. And this is where we've put together some wireframes. I'm going to jump out to those guys here. Get my mouse back. I won't even wait for the mouse to come back. There we go. So this is a wireframe of what you'd anticipate in the Explorer view. And it's something that we did a little brainstorming about how to put this together. And you'll note if you're doing a search for Abraham Lincoln up here at the top, you'll have the typical About section that we're pulling in from DBpedia and Wikidata entries, as well as our own graph. Woo, sorry. Got a hair trigger there on the scroll. And down below that information box, this is where we started pulling in not only the concepts over here on the right-hand side of the existing Passage panels that you would typically see in the Explorer, but then starting to pull in a WorldCat API search that also begins to let you take a look at WorldCat from the perspective of using the words Abraham Lincoln as a title, as an author, as a subject. So here we added in buttons to allow you to provide different views of that, sort of analogous to how someone might navigate through the card catalog and trying to anticipate the uses of the words Abraham Lincoln and how that person was thinking when they were coming to the screen to do their search. So all those things are pulled together. So this is how one way we are anticipating pulling in WorldCat data into an Explorer search. And so with that, I want to open things up for questions or comments. And one of the things we were wondering about with this view is that ability, the ability to do the selecting and deselecting of the different facets, if you will, of a WorldCat search.
This is Joyce. What is it you mean by facets? You mean by role, the author, title, subject?
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, that strikes me as quite a nice thing because I'm just as a user myself, if I'm looking for something written by a person, I'm not particularly interested in, you know, when the person appears as a subject of a work.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you.
In your wireframe here, you have My Library Holdings, which seems quite nice. You anticipating also sort of like that you could go beyond just your local institution and include other works by the person?
Yeah. Yeah. The way this is drawn up, it's not exactly selectable, but I could anticipate that could be another set of filter buttons where you'd have WorldCat and My Library Holdings, and you could just deselect My Library Holdings and go to all of WorldCat, or maybe even you know, a regional, national, worldwide thing. Okay. University of Minnesota has commented that it might be good to include format limiters as well as genre, with a notion of getting back to Cutter's rules for the catalog. Cool, that's good, yeah. A shout out to Mr. Cutter. All right, good. We just wanted to make sure that everybody got a little flavor for what we were doing with that and see that there are, you know, there's lots of options. We're going to continue to look at that as we move forward, how to blend these two things together and what that can do to really enhance the search capabilities for users as we add in graph data, pull in a broader set of references, and extend that graph out into the bigger world beyond the library. Okay.
All right, thanks, Taylor. So coming back to a bit more specific conversation about the project itself and our outcomes, I should start by saying that of the group here at OCLC, I would probably say that I'm the one who wears the rose-colored glasses, maybe, in regards to the project. If others would like to battle for that, I'd be happy to hand it over. But I'm very aware that I tend to speak very favorably about the project, I think in part because I've enjoyed it so much, and I've enjoyed working with this group here at OCLC, and of course really enjoyed working with you. So in thinking about how we can say that the project actually wrapped up and what outcomes we had, I knew I should probably be a little bit more balanced than just say what I thought. So I asked our colleague Karen, who has been a pretty active part of this project, supplementary team member, Karen Smith Yoshimura, to, given her survey expertise, provide some prompts that we could put out in the community center and have you react to that would not only say what we did well, but also say what maybe didn't go so well or what we need to spend a little bit more time researching. So just to jog your memory, because it's been a few weeks, those prompts are listed here on the screen. And the feedback you provided was terrific, and we basically have combed through that and have a much longer list of that feedback. And I know that the work that Jean and Karen are doing in terms of the research report that will be provided along with you as our partners at the end of this project will also have a lot of outcomes as well. But we just wanted to take a snippet from that feedback and provide it back to you for some discussion if applicable, or at least some awareness of what went well and what worked and what didn't work, if you will. So the first comment here, I believe, is from Kaylin. And Kaylin mentions that this is the first linked data project that really felt like it encapsulated the values catalogers hold dear, including collaboration, sharing, innovation, empowerment, inclusion, and communication. And I thought that this was a terrific takeaway, in part, of course, I guess, because I feel the same way, and particularly in regards to collaboration. So in work that I've been doing with Honor and Christine at Harvard for a presentation for the Wiki conference coming up, we talked about collaboration a lot, and they pointed out that the fact was really in office hours. It wasn't as if we all came to agreement about everything we were talking about, but really the collaboration allowed different people to air different opinions and for us as a group to kind of mull over that information and not necessarily move forward all in agreement, but to have those productive conversations that really allow for innovation that we want to see in this regard. So I thought that was really a terrific tie. To balance that, we know from the get-go, in terms of selecting the wiki-based UI, there were a lot of advantages to selecting it, and we knew there was at least one disadvantage around being able to really navigate properties. And so as Taylor showed, we did make some enhancements in that regard in terms of navigation. But as others pointed out in the community center, this came up again and again, it would be really nice to have had a way to parcel the taxonomy and deal with them into more navigatable chunks. So this is definitely something that we are looking into in the future, and Stephen Shindetti, who's been a big part of this project, will be taking that forward. So more work will certainly be done in that regard. So thank you for providing that feedback and giving really great use cases in that regard. Paul mentioned the fact that Passage was really the first post-Mark production environment that had the look and feel with what he did with his existing workflow. And we heard that also through other comments on the community center post talking about how valuable this project was for doing hands-on work in a linked data environment. So that was terrific to see and gives us a lot of insight into what we'll be covering a bit later, what we hope to do in taking this prototype to production. And an area that I think we all felt like we needed a bit more expertise and perhaps exercise of in the interface was really dealing with non-English entry. So again, Karen and others helped with that, but it would be really nice to exercise the system that we have thoroughly for non-English capabilities. Users talked about some issues in terms of handling diacritics and non-Roman characters and problems around searching that arose in that regard. what didn't make the cut here on the screen, but I feel is worth mentioning, is the glowing reviews that the retriever got. So as noted, that came at the very end of the project, but the technical team here at OCLC worked very hard based on your feedback to really provide that. And this will come up again later, but that wasn't necessarily something that was ever in scope at the start of the project, but as a result of hearing from you and the needs of the community throughout the project, evolved to be a wonderful tool for us that seemed like it got a lot of value and use, and we will be researching that as well. Others noted challenges of Sparkle, but how after learning the intricacies of Sparkle, that proved really a valuable tool as well. So I wanted to highlight those two tools in terms of the results. From the OCLC perspective, we certainly learned a lot. We set out with some goals around creating an entity ecosystem, the idea of minting entities, reconciling those entities, and relating those entities, and we accomplished that pretty early. And again, this is where the rose-colored glasses come in, so for what it's worth. I would say we also went pretty far beyond that, in that we expanded the data set that we were working with based off feedback from partners in terms of what we should be looking at. That really came up in the office hour segments, which again, in the feedback from the community center, was mentioned as being so useful to be able to communicate about how to actually get in and use the tools that were being provided as part of the project. We also spent some time gathering guidelines and doing some investigation around batch loading. So there's definitely more work to do there, but what we were able to collaborate on and discuss was certainly very helpful and gives us a lot to explore in the future. So I joked with my colleagues here at OCLC. I tried to include an image where there was like staff racing down the halls in in office chairs, but that wasn't quite what our meetings here looked like. But we do enjoy our meetings here at OCLC, and we had a lot of fun in these meetings as just a small group here, but working on a much larger scale with you as our partner. So we wanted to show a little bit about what fun looks like. And odd as it may seem, it is in this image. The key takeaways were difficult for us to select from, and Bruce contributed to this quite a bit. The first here on the screen deals with needing to devote significant time to notability, property, and reference requirements, and also guidelines around those. So those could be broken up as their own individual key takeaways to make up the slide, honestly. We know that there's a lot more work to do there, but we certainly, with your input, got on the correct path in that regard, which gets to the next key takeaway, the fact that that collaboration that's so forthcoming with this project really helped us see what's important and what we need to focus on, and as a community, what we'd like to do. From a technical perspective, we'd like to spend some more time on reconciliation and scalability based off what we've seen from this project. But we did find that Wikibase was really an ideal software stack for the pilot. It did very well. And with that technology and the partnership with you, we accomplished a lot. And so that can't be said enough of how helpful you were to this endeavor and what a role that you played. So thank you very much. In case you're interested in some numbers, we have some on the screen. And I have some mixed feelings about this slide, to be honest. I think the numbers themselves say something significant, but I don't know if it really conveys all the work that went into the project. Especially in terms of the editing number, it's worth noting that this number is just from May and just has to do with human edits and not about creating. So this is OCLC staff, partner institutions, and also work that occurred with the retriever fit in that number. And considering that we are all doing this in combination with our other 9 to 5 duties, I think that is pretty impressive. In phase 1 of the project, we worked from a listserv, so I wanted to be sure to harken back to that. There were 144 listserv posts and more community center posts, so that was really fun to see all the collaboration out there on the community center, so thank you for posting. And including, I believe, today's meeting and office hours, partner meetings and office hours totaled about 28 meetings. So those are our results by the numbers. And of course, sharing that with you because this wouldn't be possible without you. And so thank you for all the breakthroughs that you are responsible for as part of this project. And with that, we'll transition to show how breakthroughs will continue to occur with our research group. And so, Jeff?
So I'm going to be talking about research's post-passage plans, some nice alliteration for your afternoon. The first thing that we have planned is sort of already in motion, and John will talk about it later, so I'm not going to dive into it now, is that there will be consulting on production architecture, production roadmaps, helping design project plans, et cetera. The next major category of work that we have planned is producing reports about this project. So Jean Godbee and Karen Smith-Yoshimura are spearheading this, and listed here are just a few examples of the research reports that we plan on getting out the door in the next year or so. And then finally, in what I'm going to talk mostly about through the next few slides are identifying potential research areas for new projects, new pilots, et cetera, et cetera. So in that category of planning, we sort of have four main categories. The first is data ingest and batch load. The second is sort of data quality analysis. We also have data mapping and continued development of linked data applications. And I should note that all of this is speculative. We're still obviously sort of compiling our own takeaways and thoughts from the project, as well as compiling and digesting the results or the feedback from the pilot participants. So I don't want to suggest that any of this is actually planned work. These are just sort of ideas that we are now kicking around based on the results of the pilot and some of the work that John will be talking about later in our meeting. So with regards to data ingest and batch load, there's obviously some need to do some workflow analysis in terms of how to sort of programmatically ingest, transform, and batch load data. There's also, we're interested in looking at reconciling third-party data. So we'd asked you partners to give us examples of data that you'd like to see batch loaded, just for the purposes of being able to understand it, see what the formats are, what type of data it is. But one thing that we did not actually have an opportunity to do during the pilot was actually work with that data. So we're certainly interested in circling back around and maybe trying to get our hands on some sample data based on the feedback you provided, just to see what work would be necessary to integrate that into our workflow. And then finally, with regards to this type of work, is looking at alternatives to OpenRefine. So we had the retriever. We played around a little bit with OpenRefine. We use sort of MediaWiki's APIs directly, but the nice thing about working with the Wikibase and MediaWiki ecosystem is tools are continuously being developed. So things like the quick statements extension and other extensions that the community are developing are certainly of high interest to us. So with regards to data quality, this was something that we identified as being a problem in Passage sometime in May or June after we bulk loaded another large set of data. So if moving forward we are going to be relying, as we should, on outside data sources, we need to have a capability to do quality assurance on that data that we're ingesting. So things like data validation, the improvement of duplicate detection, All of this can, I guess, it falls under the umbrella of machine learning. Can we use machine learning, the magical world of machine learning, to help do these types of tasks? And the other thing that we talked about, albeit from a more hands-on, mechanical fashion, was sort of data completeness, sort of building templates for what a person should look like or a book should look like. Are there ways that we can actually build bots or algorithms to test data completeness and flag things that we don't consider to be complete enough entity descriptions, quote unquote? So the next area is data mapping. I want to emphasize that this is very much a role that we'd be consultants on. We are not actually doing this work. This will be spearheaded by Stephen Shindahedi and his team that are working on the data model moving forward. But in that effort, us folks in research will be certainly used as input to help align the vocabulary and architecture that we developed during the Pilot Passage project, and how can that influence or affect the work that Stephen's doing. And there will also be continued consultation on the OCLC ontology as it's developed. So the final sort of broad category of potential post-passage plans are sort of linked data applications. So we had talked about the Entity Explorer that we developed as a sort of alternative view to the data in Passage. We had the Retriever, which was an alternative way of getting data ingested quickly into Passage. So, moving forward, what other experimental UIs can we build, either for staff or for end users, that could help lower the barrier to entry for working in this sort of radically different graph-based environment? I think that's all I have. And at this point, I think I'll be turning it over to John to talk more concretely about what we're doing.
Yeah, so after post-passage planning, we now are getting into from prototype to product. So definitely a lot of iteration on this. So, talking about language and words, we've used the word prototype, we've used the word pilot, and from the beginning, what our organization thought was that this wasn't necessarily to test whether we would be doing something, it would be testing how we would be doing something in the area of linked data and of leveraging data in new ways for our member organizations. So just wanted to talk about what's going on right now. Even before the pilot ended, we have been engaging with our technical and development teams on how we could put this into broad use. So as many of you know from the calls, this effort has spanned the product groups that Sarah, Taylor, and I are all in, our engineering teams, and our research teams. And so we've been expanding those conversations over the last couple months to talk about what happens next. So this work continues, and we have some specific milestones this fall around architecture that will be in consultation across the company's architectural groups on. And we can't really announce any specific details about delivery dates, but our initial priorities are really around building the entity ecosystem, so around making sure that we have a robust set of data and also have APIs and services to work with that data. Along the way, we'll continue to iterate on the interface design, knowing that we probably will continue to get it right over time. And as the entity ecosystem builds and as the services continue to get more sophisticated, we'll be able to offer a richer experience in the interface. As we do that, we've got a number of guiding principles, many of which we've learned through the prototype or have reconsidered in a new light based on the prototype. The first one being that it's likely that OCLC will be operating in a mixed MARC and BibFrame and other RDF type stuff environment for a while. So solutions that we offer will have to keep that in mind. We'll need to leverage OCLC's scale and structure to really create high quality entity descriptions. And we know that part of OCLC's scale and structure and position in the market means that people expect us to be that source of persistence for identifiers and for descriptions and for services, and be very clear that those are going to be available to the community under what terms and under what licenses and all of that. So that's a very important part of what we're considering here, especially as we talk about those services being at the core. In terms of input and output, you know, anybody that's in the cataloging side of the house knows how heterogeneous catalog data can be and MARC records can be, but I think we're poised at a new era where we're going to be dealing with even more heterogeneous input and output requirements for our customers as they, again, both straddle the MARC and BibFrame worlds if that's what they want to do, but as they augment BibFrame or other RDF vocabularies with additional namespaces, you know, work with different communities, I expect that to only increase. We're also, as I said, architecting this where services are paramount, and this is around as libraries interact with the entity ecosystem, we want to make it possible for libraries to build their own applications, either individually or within consortia or networks, but we also want to make sure that any commercial providers currently working with libraries or outside the library sector can make use of OCLC data and work with us on that. And then lastly, we want to keep the end in mind. So the end in mind should always be around making sure that library collections are more visible. As we all know, the place where they need to be visible is the web, and we need to have that in the forefront of our mind, or at the front of mind as we're developing these systems, to make sure that with the additional complexity, we're also keeping an eye on efficiency and making sure that this is done in an efficient manner for all the hidden collections or less leveraged collections, as well as the very visible ones. So just a plug then going forward, we are setting up an advisory group to guide us now that the pilot is wrapping up and we're moving into production services and applications. If you are interested in participating and have not heard from us about participating, I encourage you to reach out directly to Sarah, and she will tell you all about how to get involved with that advisory group. OCLC staff will be involved in a couple of presentations coming up, and I have one more to add that didn't make it onto the slide. So October 21st, there's a wiki conference here in Columbus, Ohio, and Sarah, as she mentioned earlier, will be presenting with Harvard staff there. We anticipate, but don't have a lot of form yet, on the session at ALA Midwinter, so we know that there will be topics related to this topic presented at that roundtable, but that's still shaping up. Another one that's related that will be happening is October 30th. There will be a OCLC research webinar that I believe Bruce Washburn is either hosting or leading with Merrily Profit. I'm going to be presenting as well on that one. So that is on Tuesday, October 30th. And if you are planning to present any material based on Passage, we would love to hear about it. And we are also, if you need any help with screenshots or anything like that, please work with us and we can help you with that. So that's really the end of my contribution for the presentation. I just want to close by personally thanking you for your participation in this. You know, Taylor and I on the product side are very engaged with leading initiatives on new applications and products. Sarah is obviously a key part of that effort as well, and three of us from the product side have been very happy to have your help and the help of the other OCLC staff represented on the group to really do this the right way by having a broad-based discussion, one that's been based on experimentation, on participation, and on discussion. So thank you very much, and I look forward to talking with you soon in another venue.
Thank you. And Joyce, we know that you posted your next event, I believe, in November in the community center. So thanks for making us aware of that. So just a few next steps then, and basically we're at the end, but we're not turning off the lights just yet. So a few things we wanted to share. The community center will continue to be available to you in case you are presenting or doing some reporting or writing about the project and want to refer back to some lively discussion threads. But we will be turning off the ability to make new posts probably at the end of this week. So let us know if you have any concerns about that. Wikibase accounts will also be deactivated. So we know, again, that there are some folks out there who are going to be pulling information together for presentations and the like. So if you'd like to keep your account more active than not, let us know. Our target for that would probably be the end of the month. So if you need more access to the Wikibase UI in terms of actually doing editing and creating beyond the end of October, do let us know. The tools out there, so the Retriever and the Explorer and the Sparkle query, those will continue to be available through the end of the calendar year. So all of those items that you might be using to do reads, basically, of the data will continue to be available through December. And that includes the Wikibase UI, too. It's just that ability to edit and create from the UI will be deactivating. So that's our plan for the project going forward. I think initially we were thinking it would be a bit of a harder stop, but in thinking about needs that might arise in regards to talking about the presentation, or the project and presentations and such, we wanted to be sure that you have what you need. So the lights will be on for a little while longer. And we want to say a big thank you. And Andrew posted in chat there. Andrew was initially supposed to be in New Mexico during this last partner meeting, so he's been quiet this time around, but he's here and just wants to give you an opportunity to say thanks.
Sure. I want to echo what John said from the research side. You know, in the day-to-day work of Project Passage, you know, we've spent a lot of time on trying to build more intelligent workflows. We've been trying to connect those workflows to a nice global data network. But we tend to overlook, though we'd like to repeat, the fact that it's the community piece of this that really sort of drives the work. We can any of us sit in a corner and try to build more intelligent workflows and find more data. But I think that the community feel that we've had and the input that we've had from you was really what drove this project. And so we're looking at the way that we did this to sort of fuel future projects for whatever comes after linked data, or the thing that comes after the thing that comes after linked data, because there's always new things coming down the pike. So again, thanks for your wholehearted participation. Sarah and I were talking the other day about just, putting the call out to folks and then being overwhelmed at times by the 100% response rate that we got from folks from wanting to participate. So we thank all of you, especially the folks that were extremely active in the community center and with the editing and with the feedback at the office hours and things like that. So a wholehearted thanks from research as well as from the product folks.
Which means you'll likely be hearing from us again and future partners.
Tell your friends.
Yes, exactly. All right, well, that's all we had for today. This session was recorded, and we'll be posting that to the community center, which you'll have access to. But thanks again, and don't hesitate to reach out if you have any questions.